Hey there, Wellness Warriors. Welcome to the Anchor to Wellness Show.
So today I want to have a really honest conversation. If I sound a little fired up, it's because I am. I need to talk to you about something that has been weighing on me, something I know a lot of you probably see online too, and that is that functional medicine is brushed off as woo-woo, or even worse, that doctors like me are just quacks trying to profit off desperate people. And honestly, nothing cuts deeper than that accusation. Because here's the truth, I didn't step in this kind of medicine to make a fortune. If I wanted to make big money, I would just go back to conventional healthcare system. I would just crank up my patient load, maximize my RVUs, and keep churning people through the system. That's the game. See more patients, bill more codes, make more money. And I've lived that life. And let me tell you, it was soul crushing. That is exactly why I don't do that anymore. So when people imply that because I don't take insurance, I must just be out here trying to take advantage of people, it hurts. It's offensive, and honestly, it's not true. The reality, I make less money now than I did in the conventional healthcare system, but I also have more freedom, I have more capacity, and I have a reignited passion for what I do. Because I'm not chained to this 7 to 10 minute office visit that's dictated by what an insurance will or won't cover. And I get to actually help people again change their health. And for me, that's worth everything. What made this sting even more recently was I was stupid and I made a comment on another doctor's post on a social media channel, and I got ridiculed. All I said was that I hoped that one day more physicians would be open-minded to the idea that maybe health isn't as simple as just getting a diagnosis and prescribing a medication. And maybe we could work on that. Maybe we could be a little more open-minded. And whoa, the backlash that I received, I was mocked. People were saying things like, oh, her account says anchored to wellness, so anything wellness must be just a bunch of bull. And I'm just like, what the heck? I was made fun of, and I was treated like I was this naive one for the one that was even suggesting it in the first place. And here's the thing, I know what both worlds look like. I've been on both sides, and that's exactly what makes me a better doctor. What I have also found very frustrating is this phrase we always hear when we're throwing around functional medicine and how it's woo-woo or whatever, is we don't practice evidence-based medicine. It's like implying that functional medicine isn't evidence-based. And I just am like, you know what? Maybe I would have said that before I knew about functional medicine, but I also consider myself to be pretty open-minded. And I just have to shake my head, because where does so much of that evidence even come from that they're spouting research on? A lot of times it's like, oh, if it fits their narrative, then it's evidence-based research. But if it doesn't fit it, then it's just correlation. Like, what else could be contributing? It didn't fit what they wanted it to say. So let's be real. Research is often funded by industries with these big financial stakes like pharma, insurance, food. There are conflicts of interest everywhere into most of these studies that get waved around as gospel. And so when I see my colleagues parroting the line that functional medicine is not evidence-based, I want to say, well, actually it is. And the Cleveland Clinic has opened their doors to functional medicine. They have a functional medicine center now, and they even have a residency program. So the research is there, and what's missing is the willingness to dig into it without a bias. So here's the kicker. Just because something is holistic doesn't mean it's not real medicine. I recently saw a post from a very influential, she has a very high follower account, and she was scoffing at holistic. And I was just like, I don't even know how that's a thing. Like it got me a little fired up. Okay. Like, holistic is not a bad word. It doesn't mean that we're quacks and woo-woo by saying the word holistic. I'm an osteopath. So by golly, like, we do practice holistic medicine. It's just we've kind of shifted away from that a little bit, and I'm getting back on track with that. So the word holistic, it gets dismissed like it belongs to some fringe world of crystals and fairy dust. But when we say holistic, we literally mean we are treating the whole person. We're taking the time to look at the whole picture. And if that's funny to someone or worthy of ridicule, then honestly, that says more about their narrow-mindedness than about the medicine itself. So today I want to unpack this. I want to share what I've seen in both conventional and functional medicine. I want to talk about why this matters, not just me as a doctor, but to you, because the way our system is set up right now is keeping people stuck in survival mode. And I want you to hear me loud and clear. I don't believe functional medicine is better. I just believe it's different. And sometimes different is exactly what we need when we're not getting better in the systems we've been handed, okay? One of the things I think about is how impactful it is because I can live in both camps, functional medicine and conventional medicine. And that is something I'm so grateful for. I have had a very strong background in conventional care, and I really do believe it shaped me into the doctor I am today. For years, my world was diagnosis driven and medication focused and honestly insurance guided. And for a while, that was fine. It worked for a lot of people. But I started to notice something that didn't sit right with me, especially in women after their childbearing years. They had a lot of vague symptoms like fatigue, brain fog, mood swings, changes in their weight, changes in their sleep, and more often than not, those things would just get brushed off because they're vague. They don't have a specific symptom set. They don't have a diagnosis. So it just kind of gets brushed off and sometimes told like, oh, this is just depression. It's just anxiety. It's just busy mom syndrome. And I'll be honest with you, I felt the same thing in my own body. I'll share more of my personal story a little bit later. But at this time, even as a doctor, I knew something was off. I could feel what I was experiencing and what my patients were experiencing was more than just, oh, this is just depression or anxiety. It's just stress, whatever. It's just aging. It's just normal because of your aging. But in that conventional model, there wasn't really room or time to dig deeper and honestly not really taught to us in medical school. And that left so many people stuck. Here's the thing. I believe I was a really good doctor in that world. I had great patients. They loved me. I loved them. I cared about my patients. I worked hard for them and I tried to help them the best way I knew how. But now I truly believe I'm a much better doctor because functional medicine gave me the tools to dive deeper. It gave me permission to look at root causes, to run testing that actually explained why someone was struggling. I learned more about functional labs and how to look at even normal blood work, like through the eyes of an optimal physiology and not just waiting until disease present and then we're outside those reference ranges, right? So I wanted to move people beyond symptom management into real healing. And this is where I want to bring up what I call this illness to wellness spectrum. In conventional care, we typically stop at this like symptom control or disease control. You get a diagnosis, you get a treatment plan, and the goal is to manage the disease. And for many people, that is a blessing. That is needed, right? Sometimes symptom control is exactly what someone needs, and that is good. That's enough. Like, we don't need to go any further with them. But I will never downplay how powerful conventional medicine can be. It can save lives. It does every single day. But here's what I think where we've lost our focus. We've forgotten what it means to actually get people well, to help them move along that spectrum from simply existing in a survival mode to actually thriving, from illness to wholeness, from just not being sick to truly living well. And I can tell you right now, so many people are living lives of sickness, of just getting by, and they don't even know what it feels like to feel good. Functional medicine has allowed me to help people restore their lives, not just manage their diseases, and that's why I love being able to live in both worlds. I don't believe one is better than the other. I just believe they're different. Conventional medicine, yes, it saves lives. Functional medicine restores lives, and together that's a powerful combination. So I do want to spend some time talking about the limitations of conventional care. One of the hardest things for me to reconcile when I was fully immersed in the conventional system was this reality of how medicine is structured. These office visits were short. We're talking 10 to 15 minutes with a patient, sometimes even less if the schedule's overloaded, which, let's be honest, most of the time it was. I was almost always behind. I always felt terrible walking into a room after being an hour late because I had so many patients stacked on my schedule. And in that kind of time frame, there just is simply no way to truly address these deeper issues that is really driving someone's health struggles. And I lived this. I was in it every single day. I would sit with my patients and listen to their stories, hear their concerns, and in my heart, I knew there had to be more going on because they really weren't feeling a lot better. But when I started my schedule with so many patients on it every day, that you just don't have the margin to dig into lifestyle things like nutrition and sleep and stress and movement and toxin exposures and gut health and all those things. So ultimately, it just becomes like, okay, eat better, exercise more. So, okay, what does that mean for that person? What is a goal that we can set specifically for that person? That's what I do now. Is like, what do you feel like you can do in these areas, right? So you're doing the best you can and every day with that time you have with that patient. But the truth is, these deeper root causes never make it to the conversation because the system really isn't designed for it. And I know that we learn a lot of that in medical school, but once we get into more of our training, a lot of that root cause stuff is just kind of forgotten. And a lot of it is not even be discussed in training. We are not given the level of nutritional education that we need to really understand how food impacts every single system in the body. And we didn't learn about how profoundly sleep influences our hormonal rhythms and how unrelenting stress drives metabolic chaos or how gut dysfunction quietly erodes physical and mental health. And toxins, those were barely mentioned. Yet all of these are massive drivers of chronic illness. Instead, when symptoms are vague or don't fit this clear diagnosis, they're often labeled as anxiety or depression, or even just, oh, it's just stress or aging. So the default solution is usually prescribe a medication. This is where insurance really shows its hand. The entire system is diagnosis driven. In order to bill insurance, you need a diagnosis code. And once you have that code, the path forward is typically medication because that's what insurance will cover and reimburse. And it's not necessarily because the doctor thinks medication is the only answer. It's because that's what the system looks at and that's how the patient is taken care of. That's how reimbursement works. And let me tell you, when you're told to increase your patient load, crank out higher RVUs, it just doesn't leave space for a kind of comprehensive care most people actually need. So as a board certified family medicine physician, I saw another layer of that limitation. Family medicine ends up being the bottom of the funnel for everything when specialists don't have the answers. So we do a referral, they go to the specialist, and everything comes back. It's okay, you don't really have anything I'm worried about, but they're still suffering. The message was almost always the same. Just go back to your PCP, right? So it puts family medicine doctors in a really hard situation that they're expected to have the answers for everything, but there's no tools or time or support to actually deliver that level of care that that patient deserves. And honestly, there's not enough good knowledge here to know okay, how can we keep that patient out of the silos of healthcare, right? Because that's usually what happens. One referral after another referral after another referral. And then, oh yeah, just go back to your PCP. Okay. Now I want to be very clear. I am not against conventional medicine. It has its place. It saves countless lives, but I know it also has limitations because I've lived them. I saw firsthand how the structure of the system prevented me from practicing the way I truly wanted to. And eventually, that's what drove me to step outside of it, to find another way. So I want to share a little bit about my story and how functional medicine changed my life. I just want to say a little bit because honestly, this is what made me realize that functional medicine wasn't just woo-woo talk. It's real, it's powerful, and it works. For years, I struggled with what felt like an endless loop of digestion issues. I was dealing with chronic IBS that never seemed to get better. No matter what I tried, I had the scopes, I had the procedures, I did the medications, and eventually had my gallbladder removed. I was told it's just stress. Here, take these things, take this medication, get your stress in check, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So nothing really ever really truly relieved my symptoms. And so I just got really frustrated and I just started feeling very hopeless. My doctors did what they could with the tools that they had, but the focus was mainly on controlling my symptoms and not digging deeper into why my body was not functioning the way it should. And honestly, one of the doctors I was seeing was like, hey, why don't you go find a functional doctor? And I'm like, I don't even know what that is. So I'm going to research it. I was desperate, so I did. And that decision ended up changing everything for me. I had a comprehensive stool test done, and I just did it on my own, to be honest. I didn't end up seeing anyone for this because I just was so intrigued with learning it myself. So I just did it on myself. And it was like pulling back the curtain on what had really been going on inside of me. It showed a dysbiosis, which is scoffed at online. And oh my gosh, they have an imbalance of their gut bacteria. I believe in the next 5 to 10 years, this is going to be a profound amount of research that comes out about this. And so I'm just trying to hold steady here, but I did have a dysbiosis, which is an imbalance in the gut bacteria. And I did also have pancreatic insufficiency, meaning that I was not producing the appropriate enzymes I needed to really digest my food. And I did have poor stomach acid levels that were keeping me from properly breaking down my food. I wasn't digesting fats and proteins the way I should. And all of that together was wreaking havoc, not only on my gut, but on my entire body, especially my brain. Okay. I was having brain fog. I had a little bit of depression and just depleted energy and depressed mood, all those things. So here's what blew my mind. And when I started addressing these issues, when I healed my gut, my depression lifted. I was like, what? My depression's better? Like, this is weird. I just didn't realize how much it was connected. I had struggled with those mood issues. I just thought it was part of who I was. But once my gut healed, my brain started to heal. My mood improved dramatically. I didn't realize until then how profoundly connected gut health and brain health really are. And here's the kicker. I wasn't sick in the way conventional medicine defines sickness. I didn't have a clear diagnosable disease that showed up on a standard lab test. My labs were always normal. And yes, I had IBS, but it just became like just manager stress, right? I was just stuck in this gray area where I didn't feel good, but no one could really tell me why. And there are so many people that live in this spot. They're not dying. They don't really have a specific disease process, but they're really not thriving either. And then when the system can't give you a diagnosis, it sometimes shrugs its shoulders and says that it's stress or depression or just getting older or whatever, right? But that experience taught me something life-changing. You don't have to be on the death's door to deserve healing. Functional medicine gave me answers. It gave me tools and a path forward. It worked for me. And then I've seen it work for countless people that have been told there's nothing wrong with you, yet deep down they know that just something isn't right. So this is why I do what I do. This is why I'm so passionate about helping people get from illness or whatever that vague thing is, just not feeling well, to true wellness, because I've been there. I know what it feels like to feel dismissed, and I know what it feels like to finally feel good again. So I want to talk here about why the mockery. Here's the part that still gets under my skin. Functional medicine, we've already talked, it's woo-woo, it's quackery, it's not real medicine. I've been called a quack myself. I've had my comments mocked on social media by other doctors that claim it's not evidence-based, as if functional medicine has no science behind it. And honestly, that stings. It's frustrating because I've lived in both camps. I know what it looks like to practice both conventional and functional medicine. I can tell you it's just different. It's a different approach. It's not necessarily the best and better and all that. It's just different. And I just got so overwhelmed by the arrogance and the condescending attitude that came from those criticisms. There's this assumption that if you don't do things the conventional way, you're just out to make money or exploit people. And let me pause here. There's nothing wrong with making a living by helping people. Everyone is doing that. Electricians help people. Plumbers are helping people. Air conditioning people are helping people. So why can we not help people and still make an income? So every doctor, every hospital, every pharmaceutical company, every insurance CEO, they're all making money. But somehow when you step outside this insurance model, we're painted as greedy or predatory. And the reality, I do make far less than I did in the conventional system, but the difference now, I actually love going to work. I'm not burnt out. I love helping my patients. I get to help people heal instead of just shuffle them through symptom management or this referral or this specialist and putting them into those silos of the medical system. So why do some doctors push so hard? I don't know. I think a lot of it comes down to training. Doctors are trained to diagnose and code and prescribe and move on, and that's a system. Anything outside of that framework just feels foreign and maybe even threatening. And there's also fear, maybe, I don't know, fear of what they don't know, fear of stepping outside the box, fear of the unknown. And then there's this deeply ingrained belief that If something isn't FDA approved or backed by the right kind of study, it's not valid. But this is happening all over the place. It's not always FDA approved. Even stuff they're doing in conventional medicine is not always FDA approved. So let's be honest, where do a lot of those studies come from anyway? Who funds them? There's a lot of what I consider to be evidence-based propaganda out there. I got ridiculed for that statement because, oh my gosh, she must be total crazy because I said evidence-based propaganda. I'm just totally whatever. And I'm like, but there are conflicts of interest everywhere. Just because something doesn't have the stamp of FDA approval doesn't mean it's not effective. And we can go look at the whole opioid crisis and why part of why we're in that is honestly because of some of this evidence-based propaganda out there. Okay. So go research that if you're really curious. Here's the kicker. Functional medicine is evidence-based. As I addressed earlier, the Cleveland Clinic, oh my gosh, one of the most prestigious medical institutions in the country, has an entire center for functional medicine. They're not only practicing, but they've established a residency program to train new doctors in functional medicine. If this was truly quackery, would the Cleveland Clinic be investing millions of dollars and building an entire department around it? I don't think so. In fact, Cleveland Clinic has been publishing research showing that functional medicine patients have significant improvements in quality of life, reductions in symptom severity, and even lower healthcare utilization compared to conventional care patients. I don't think that's woo-woo. That's measurable, documented evidence. So the truth is, when you look at the actual data, functional medicine offers something that conventional medicine often doesn't, and that is a path towards true wellness. Instead of being embraced, it's being ridiculed. And that, to me, says more about the culture of medicine than it does about the validity of functional medicine. It's easier to mock what you don't understand than it is to open your mind and admit there may be another way, right? So, what functional medicine really does, it's more than just being woo-woo, right? And it's not about just throwing a handful of supplements at someone and hoping for the best. At its core, functional medicine is about asking why. Why is this symptom happening? Why is this person struggling with fatigue or anxiety or brain fog or gut issues? What is the underlying driver? Because the reality is there's always a reason. Almost always we find why that person is experiencing that. Anxiety is not just like, oh, you have anxiety, so here's a medication. There's usually something underlying creating that. So the myth out there that functional medicine is somehow fluffy or unscientific because it talks about things like toxins and gut dysfunction and heavy metals and hormone imbalances. But here's the thing. Those are real, measurable physiologic issues. They show up on functional lab tests. They impact cellular processes. And they explain why so many people who don't have a diagnosable disease still don't feel good. This is where I think people get stuck. Many people who end up seeking functional medicine aren't sick in the conventional sense. They don't have a diagnosis that can be coded. They don't have a disease that you can point to, right? They're not thriving. They're living in survival mode, pushing through fatigue, dealing with brain fog, struggling with mood issues, not sleeping, and thinking that just normal because nothing glares up on labs. They're just being written off, right? So functional medicine is about pulling people out of that survival mode and helping them find the path back to thriving. One of the analogies I often use with my patients is like a roots and leaves of a tree analogy. In conventional medicine, the leaves represent the symptoms. That's fatigue or headaches or bloating or anxiety or whatever diagnosis someone has, okay? What most of our symptom does is just spray the leaves, maybe make the leaves look a little better for a while. But the root system hasn't been touched, okay? This is another thing. A lot of the people that are condescending are just saying like, oh, we don't practice root cause, blah, blah, blah. Like they don't know the root cause. And I'm like, well, I lived it. You don't really dive into the root cause of things, right? So functional medicine is digging deeper into that soil, looking at things like gut health and hormones and toxin exposures and our sleep and our nutrition and even what's happening at the level of the cell. We have to have healthy cells. We have to go back to our scientific evidence research-based knowledge of histology and all those things to know. So ultimately the cells do have to be healthy. And because of that, then the roots are healthy and then the whole tree can thrive, right? So the body, yes, it is designed to heal itself, but only when the pathways for healing aren't blocked. If someone is nutrient depleted, dealing with mold exposure, struggling with chronic inflammation, or living with severe unrelenting stress, the body can't just heal. It's like trying to grow a tree in toxic soil. Functional medicine helps to clear the soil, restore the balance, and allow the body to do what it's designed to do, to heal. Now, I want to make this clear. I'm not anti-medication. Medications do save lives, and sometimes they are absolutely the right choice. But what I've learned both in my journey and in working with patients is that medication alone isn't the whole answer. I actually say that to my patients every day about supplements as well. Supplements can get very like pill for an ill kind of too, so we can't just rely on the supplements either. But sometimes these can mask or manage a symptom, but if we never ask why the symptom is happening in the first place, we never really solve the problem. Functional medicine fills that gap. At the end of the day, functional medicine isn't better than conventional medicine. Again, it's just different. It's about bridging the gap between not sick enough for a diagnosis, but not well enough to enjoy life. And when we start focusing on root causes instead of just chasing symptoms, we can really start to help people reclaim their energy and their clarity and their mood and ultimately their lives. So here's what I talk about with the goal of wellness. When I think about true wellness, I don't just think about whether someone has a diagnosis or not. I think about biological age compared to chronological age. Your chronological age is simply how many candles have you had on your birthday cake. But your biological age tells us the real story. How old are your cells? How old are they functioning? How resilient are your systems? How well is your body actually aging on the inside? And here's the truth. Those numbers don't always match. I've seen 45-year-olds with labs, energy, and brain health of someone in their 70s. And I've seen 70-year-olds because they've taken care of themselves and all the things. They have the stamina, they have mental sharpness, and they have the vibrancy of someone 20 years younger. We all know someone like that. That's the gap where I want to help people close. My vision for patients is for them to be hiking in their 80s, to still be sharp and engaged in their 90s, to be present for their children and grandchildren, and not just physically be alive, but alive and thriving. But here's the hard reality. So many people wait until it's too late. They ignore the brain fog, the fatigue, the anxiety, the digestive issues. They chalk it up to just getting older or just stress. And by the time they finally take action, their body is in full-blown crisis mode. That's when it's harder. Yes, it's still possible, but it is harder because once that disease has set in, we're not just working to restore function, we're fighting to repair damage. So that's why prevention and early intervention are so powerful. Functional medicine allows us to catch dysfunction before it turns into disease. Maybe your labs are normal, but you feel anything but normal. You're told everything looks fine, but you know you don't feel fine, right? So we are using very skewed reference range intervals. They are based off our population as a whole, and our population is sick. I don't want to be compared to sick people. So let's function on optimal physiology. Let's push people towards optimal. That's why a lot of times we have to work towards, are we seeing dysfunction develop in the labs because they're not optimal levels, but they're still normal? So that's where I really focus, okay? We can reverse dysfunction before it becomes disease. We can lower your biological age now so that your future self doesn't pay the price later. So functional medicine can absolutely help reverse disease states. I've seen it happen time and again with patients who've already been given that diagnosis, but it is so much easier, more effective, and frankly more empowering to step in before that happens, to be proactive instead of reactive, to choose wellness over waiting. That's where the real magic happens, when you don't just avoid disease, but you're actively building a life of resilience and energy and clarity. So my goal for every patient and for myself is to create that gap where your biological age is lower than your chronological age. To extend not just the years of your life, but the life in your years. Because at the end of the day, it's not about living longer, it's about living better. So I want you to move beyond the noise. I have to do that. I have to be honest with you. This has not always been easy for me. There have been plenty of times when I have been mocked or dismissed for the work I'm doing. I've been told all the bad things about functional medicine. It's not evidence-based. It's not real medicine. And I'll admit those words do sting, especially when it comes from colleagues who I know deep down do want to help people. but who can't or won't see beyond the box that they were trained in. Here's the thing though. I know what I'm seeing in my patients. I know what I lived through myself. I know how many times people have come to me after years of being told everything looks fine when they were anything but fine. And now I know that when we dig deeper, when we address gut health and hormones and toxins and nervous system regulation and sleep and stress and nutrition, we will see transformation. Not just symptom management, not just another prescription, but real change. So when people throw out the narrative that functional medicine isn't evidence-based, we go back to even just looking at what Cleveland Clinic is doing, right? They're training their residents in this model. They are publishing studies showing improved outcomes. There are thousands of peer-reviewed studies connecting nutrition and stress and toxins and sleep and gut health with chronic disease, brain health, and longevity. So why are we just dismissing that this is not evidence-based? It's just not, that's not true. It's simply a reflection of not being up to date on the evidence that does exist. So functional medicine does get thrown around if we're asking questions about nutrition, lifestyle, toxins, or hormones, or like it's some like magical thinking. But let me ask you, how is it quackery to talk about the fact that our food supply has changed drastically in the last 50 years? That our stress levels are higher than ever before? That we're exposed daily to chemicals and plastics and pollutants our bodies were never designed to handle at this scale? That poor gut health and inflammation impact neurotransmitters in the brain? These aren't conspiracy theories. These are measurable biological realities. The truth is, it does take courage to stand in this space, to be the one saying, we can do better. It takes courage to challenge the system, especially when the system is designed to keep people in it for life. But I can't ignore what I've seen. I can't unlearn what I've learned. I can't go back to a model that treats people like a set of symptoms instead of a whole person. Yes, sometimes it hurts when people make fun of what I do, but what makes it worth it? Watching a patient who is losing hope regain their energy, their clarity, their relationships, and their life. Seeing someone go from simply existing to truly living. That is the evidence that no snide comment can take away from me. That is why I keep doing this work, and that's why I keep speaking up even when it's uncomfortable. Because the reality is, the current system is failing too many people. And functional medicine isn't perfect, but it offers something conventional medicine doesn't. It does offer the hope of getting well, not just getting by, okay? So at the end of the day, I want to be clear. Conventional medicine is vital. It saves lives. It's where you need to be if you have a car accident, a heart attack, or some sort of medical emergency. But it's also incomplete when it comes to the growing epidemic of chronic diseases, brain health decline, and the millions of people walking around every day that just don't feel good, but they are told they're fine. This is where I believe functional medicine comes in. We're not rejecting conventional medicine, but do we need to build a bridge? Yes. It's about saying, yes, thank you for stabilizing me in a crisis, but now how do I truly heal? How do I move from illness to wellness, from surviving to thriving? Let's look deeper. Let's ask better questions. Let's give people hope that their story isn't over just because a prescription didn't fix it, okay? And sometimes hope does give people the motivation to improve. So yes, hope is a part of the whole story. It's hard to measure that, to make sure that we can say it's evidence-based, but hope does provide that. So let me challenge you. If you've been tired, if you've been dismissed, or you've been told that another medication is your only option, maybe it's time to look at your health differently. Maybe it's time to say, okay, what is underneath this? Why is my body struggling in the first place? And maybe it's time to consider that real answers might exist outside of that 10-minute office visit and a refill. I know functional medicine sometimes gets this bad rap because there are a lot of practitioners out there dabbling in it and they don't have great training for it. Okay, I get that. But when it's done with the right education, training, the right discernment, it's one of the most powerful approaches to healing I have ever seen. It saved me and it saved countless patients who were otherwise left with no answers. And that's why I'm committed to making functional medicine more accessible for everyone through teaching and resources, doing this podcast, and even offering functional lab testing on a broader scale, because everyone deserves to understand what's happening in their body and to have the tools to change it. So here's the truth. Functional medicine matters because you matter. Your health matters. Your ability to think clearly, feel energized, and live fully matters. And the sooner we stop seeing this as woo and quackery and start seeing it as the missing link in our broken healthcare system, the sooner we can actually move the needle on wellness. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Anchor to Wellness Show. Together, let's anchor ourselves to a life of vibrant well-being. Until next time, take care, stay curious, and embrace the journey to holistic vitality. Stay anchored and stay well.